One stormy night, a struggling single mom pulls over to help a stranger, never knowing he's one of the richest men in the country. She thinks it's just a quick act of kindness. But the next day, she sees him again in a luxury suite in the Grand Hotel where she scrubs floors. He offers her an unexpected opportunity. But one innocent whisper from her little boy at a crowded gala changes everything. In seconds, she's at the center of a scandal she never started. Her job on the line, her reputation shattered, and gossip tearing through the town. But this man can't stop thinking about Heron. There's something about her past he doesn't know, something that could bind them forever, or destroy them both. When the truth comes out, will it bring them together, or break everything apart? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Thunder rumbled across Lake Willoughby as Maya Alvarez drove home from another long shift at the Grand Hotel. The windshield wipers worked overtime against the heavy rain, their steady rhythm matching the hymn she hummed under her breath. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. The familiar melody helped ease the tension in her shoulders after hours of making beds and scrubbing bathrooms. Through the rain-streaked windshield, her headlights caught the flash of hazard lights up ahead. A black SUV sat partially pulled onto the shoulder of County Road 6, its sleek frame out of place on the rural highway. Maya slowed down, noticing a tall figure struggling with something near the rear tire. "Lord, give me strength," she whispered, already knowing she couldn't drive past someone in trouble. Her father had taught her better than that. With practiced care, she pulled her old Honda safely onto the shoulder, leaving enough space between vehicles. Grabbing her rain jacket from the back seat, Maya stepped out into the downpour. The man looked up as she approached. He wore what had probably been a crisp button-up shirt before the rain soaked it through. His frustrated expression shifted to relief when he saw her. "Having some trouble?" she called over the sound of rain hitting pavement. "That obvious, huh?" He gave a sheepish laugh, gesturing at the flat tire and the jack he'd been wrestling with. "I thought I knew how to change a tire, but apparently not in these conditions." Maya couldn't help but smile at his honesty. "Here, let me help. Those city hands of yours probably haven't seen much practical use." She knelt down beside the tire, not minding the wet asphalt soaking through her work pants. "That obvious too?" He held up his hands in mock surrender, showing off their unmarked state. "Just a little." Maya positioned the jack properly under the frame. "I'm guessing you don't do much manual labor in that shirt." He chuckled, moving to hold an umbrella over her as she worked. "Guilty as charged, though I'd like to think I'm not completely useless." "We'll see about that. Hand me that lug wrench." Maya pointed to the tool lying nearby. Working quickly and efficiently, Maya loosened the lug nuts while explaining each step. The stranger proved to be an attentive student, asking intelligent questions between their easy banter. Despite the rain and late hour, she found herself enjoying the interaction. "You make this look so easy," he commented as she positioned the spare tire. "Practice makes perfect. My dad owned an auto shop. He made sure his little girl knew her way around a car." Maya tightened the last lug nut with practiced precision. "There you go, good as new." "Well, as good as a spare can be." "Thank you so much." He reached for his wallet. "Please, let me compensate you for your time and expertise." Maya held up a hand, shaking her head. "No need. Just pay it forward next time you see someone who needs help." She turned back to her car but paused, struck by a sudden impulse. The blue thermos of cinnamon coffee her coworker Harold had given her sat in the cup holder, still mostly full and warm. "Here," she said, retrieving it and pressing it into the stranger's hands. "To warm you up after all this rain. You can return it another time." "But how will I?" he started to ask. But Maya was already heading back to her car. "Pay it forward," she called over her shoulder, giving a quick wave before sliding behind the wheel. As she pulled back onto the road, Maya caught a glimpse of him in her rearview mirror. Still standing in the rain, thermos in hand, watching her drive away. The image brought a small smile to her face as she turned onto her quiet street, the wet pavement reflecting the glow of streetlights like scattered stars. "Amazing Grace," she hummed again, picking up where she'd left off. The rain had begun to ease, and her soaked work uniform clung uncomfortably to her skin, but her heart felt light. Jonah would be waiting at Mrs. Peterson's house next door, probably still awake despite the late hour, eager to tell her about his day at school. Maya thought about the stranger with his expensive SUV and city hands. She hoped the coffee would help warm him up. Harold always made it strong and sweet, with just the right amount of cinnamon. It had been a small gesture, but sometimes those meant the most. Her father had taught her that too, along with everything else about cars and kindness. The familiar sight of her small rental house came into view, its porch light a welcoming beacon in the rainy night. Maya steered her Honda into the driveway, tiredness finally settling into her bones. But it was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from a hard day's work and helping someone in need. From her driveway, Maya could still see a faint glow of hazard lights in the distance, like a tiny orange star on the horizon. She gathered her purse and jacket, ready to collect Jonah and hear about his adventures. Tomorrow would bring another long day at the hotel, but for now she had done what she could to make someone else's evening a little better. "Just like you taught me, Dad," she whispered, touching the small cross necklace she always wore. The rain pattered softly around her as she walked to Mrs. Peterson's door, leaving wet footprints on the concrete path. Morning light filtered through the hotel's service entrance as Maya tied her crisp white apron, her fingers moving through the familiar motions. The steady patter of rain against the windows hadn't let up since yesterday's downpour. "I swear this rain's never gonna end," Carol said, adjusting her name badge in the small mirror they shared. "My garden's practically underwater." "At least we're inside," Maya replied, smoothing her dark hair back into a neat bun. "Though these wet floors are going to be a nightmare to keep clean with all the guests tracking in mud." The two housekeepers gathered their supplies, wheels squeaking as they pushed their carts toward the main part of the hotel. The Lake Willoughby Grand service corridors opened into a stunning lobby, with soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers that caught the gray morning light. Maya paused at the entrance to the lobby, her eyes drawn to a group of men in suits gathered near the antique reception desk. Her breath caught as she recognized one of them, the man from last night's roadside tire change. In the light of day, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit instead of rain-soaked clothes, he cut an impressive figure. "That's Eli Whitaker," Carol whispered, nudging Maya's arm. "The billionaire who's thinking about funding the old foundry project. Can you imagine? Real jobs coming back to Lake Willoughby?" Maya watched as Mrs. Hargrove, the hotel manager, gestured animatedly while speaking to Mr. Whitaker and what appeared to be local officials. The manager's perfectly coiffed silver hair and pressed burgundy blazer projected her usual air of careful authority. Just then, Mr. Whitaker glanced in their direction. His eyes widened slightly in recognition, and a warm smile spread across his face. Before Maya could wheel her cart away, he excused himself from the group and walked over. "My roadside angel," he said, his voice carrying the same gentle tone from the night before. "I didn't get to properly thank you yesterday." Maya felt her cheeks warm as Mrs. Hargrove and the officials turned to stare. "It was nothing, sir. Anyone would have stopped." "But they didn't." "You did." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out her blue thermos. "The cinnamon coffee was excellent, by the way. I promised to pay it forward, remember?" "You really didn't have to return it," Maya said, accepting the thermos with a small smile. "Actually, I had another reason for wanting to find you." He glanced back at the group of officials before continuing. "We're developing plans for a community training center at the old foundry site. One component would be an auto repair clinic, teaching basic car maintenance to people who can't afford regular service. Given your obvious expertise, I'd love to get your input on the project." Maya blinked in surprise. "Me? I just changed tires, Mr. Whitaker. I learned from my father, that's all. Please, call me Eli. And sometimes the best teachers are the ones who understand the basics inside and out." His eyes crinkled warmly. "What do you say? We could use a practical perspective." Before Maya could respond, Mrs. Hargrove's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she approached. "Mr. Whitaker," The mayor is eager to continue our discussion about the zoning requirements. Of course, Eli said, but his attention remained on Maya. Think about it. My office can get you the details. Mrs. Hargrove's perfectly lined lips tightened. As soon as Eli rejoined the officials, she turned to Maya with a stern expression. Maya, dear, while we appreciate Mr. Whitaker's enthusiasm, remember to maintain professional distance with our guests. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings. The warning in her tone was clear. Maya nodded, keeping her face carefully neutral. Yes, Mrs. Hargrove, third floor is waiting for service. I should get started. She guided her cart toward the elevator, feeling the weight of Mrs. Hargrove's disapproving gaze. As the doors began to close, she caught Eli stealing one last glance in her direction, his expression thoughtful and curious. Maya pressed the button for the third floor, her father's voice echoing in her memory. Sometimes God sends help in unexpected ways, Mija. Keep your eyes open. The elevator dinged and Maya wheeled her cart into the plush hallway, the blue thermos tucked safely in her apron pocket. Through the window at the end of the corridor, the rain continued to fall on Lake Willoughby, washing everything clean. Evening shadows stretched across Main Street as Maya walked toward Harold's Auto Repair. The familiar scent of motor oil and grease grew stronger as she approached the weathered brick building. Through the wide garage doors, she could hear the muffled sound of cartoons mixing with Harold's gravelly humming. "Mommy!" Jonah's voice rang out as she stepped inside. He bounded toward her, his dark curls bouncing, toy cars clutched in both hands. Harold looked up from the engine he was tinkering with, wiping his hands on a red shop rag. "Kid's got a real knack for cars, Maya. Been telling me all about his plans to build the fastest toy car in the world." "Is that so?" Maya smiled, ruffling Jonah's hair. "Did you thank Mr. Harold for watching you?" Jonah nodded enthusiastically. "Thank you. Can I come back tomorrow, please?" "We'll see, my Joe." Maya gathered Jonah's backpack while Harold chuckled. "Anytime, kid. Just keep those Hot Wheels away from my socket wrenches." The evening air was cool as they started their walk home, Jonah's small hand warm in hers. Street lamps flickered on one by one, casting pools of light on the sidewalk. "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to build cars," Jonah declared, swinging their joined hands. "Mr. Harold showed me how engines work. Did you know they have pistons that go up and down? Like this?" He demonstrated with exaggerated arm movements, nearly dropping his precious cars. "Careful there, Speed Racer," Maya laughed. "Maybe we should master tying shoelaces before tackling engine repair?" "I can do both," Jonah insisted. "Mr. Harold says I'm a natural, just like you and Grandpa were." Maya's heart squeezed at the mention of her father. "Your grandpa would have loved teaching you about cars, mi amor." The next morning found Maya pushing her towel cart through the Lake Willoughby Grand's lobby. Jonah walked beside her, carefully holding his favorite toy cars, while she finished her morning deliveries before dropping him at school. "Remember, my Joe, stay close," Maya started. But Jonah had already spotted something, or someone, across the lobby. "It's the man from yesterday," Jonah exclaimed, pointing to where Eli Whitaker stood near the front desk, reviewing some papers. Before Maya could stop him, Jonah darted over, toy cars raised high. "Look at my cars! This one's a '67 Mustang, just like Mr. Harold has in his shop." To Maya's surprise, Eli immediately set his papers aside and knelt down to Jonah's level, his face lighting up with genuine interest. "That's quite a collection you have there. May I see?" Jonah carefully placed his prized possessions in Eli's outstretched hand. "This red one's my favorite, but the wheel's wobbly. Mr. Harold says sometimes parts need fixing." Eli examined the tiny car with exaggerated seriousness. "You know, I think I might know a trick for fixing that. Would you like me to show you?" Jonah's eyes widened. "Really? You know about cars, too?" "Well, after meeting your mom, I realized I should learn more." Eli glanced up at Maya with a warm smile. "She taught me quite a lesson about car maintenance in the rain." Jonah giggled. Mommy's the best at fixing things. She can change a tire super fast, and she knows all about brake pads and timing belts and—" "Jonah," Maya interrupted gently. "Mr. Whitaker probably has important meetings to get to." "Actually," Eli said, still focused on the toy car, "I think this is pretty important too. Look here. See how this axle's bent? That's why your wheel wobbles." Just then, Pastor Ruth McCall walked into the lobby, her silver hair neatly pinned back and a knowing smile on her face as she took in the scene. "Well, if it isn't our guardian angel of stranded motorists," Pastor Ruth said, approaching the group. "Maya, I hear you've been spreading kindness on rainy nights again." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "Just doing what anyone would do, Pastor." "That's exactly what makes it special, dear." Pastor Ruth turned to Eli. "Mr. Whitaker, it does my heart good to see someone of your position taking time to notice our town's invisible workers. Too many people look right through them." Eli stood, straightening his suit jacket. "Please, call me Eli. And I found that the most valuable insights often come from people others overlook." He handed the toys back to Jonah. "Tell you what, if your mom agrees, maybe we can work on fixing that wheel together sometime?" "Can we, Mommy, please?" Jonah bounced on his toes, clutching his cars. Maya hesitated, conscious of Mrs. Hargrove's warning about professional distance. But the pure joy on Jonah's face made her pause. "We'll see, my Joe. Right now we need to get you to school." She gestured toward the towel cart. "And I have rooms waiting." "Of course," Eli said smoothly. "But the offer stands. Sometimes the simplest repairs make the biggest difference." As Maya guided Jonah back toward the cart, she couldn't help but watch from the corner as her son showed Eli one last trick with his toy car, their laughter echoing in the grand lobby. Something unfamiliar tugged in her chest, a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time, seeing Jonah's unguarded smile and the gentle way Eli listened to every word. Pastor Ruth's voice carried across the lobby as she spoke with Eli. "You know, sometimes God puts people in our path for a reason. We just have to be willing to see it." Maya busied herself with straightening the towels, trying to ignore the way that tugging feeling in her chest grew stronger. The late afternoon sun slanted through the Lake Willoughby Grand's ballroom windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Maya adjusted another centerpiece, making sure the white roses stood perfectly straight. Around her, other staff members hustled about, transforming the already elegant space into something magical for tonight's fundraising gala. "A little to the left," Carol whispered, pointing to a slightly crooked tablecloth. "Mrs. Hargrove's been checking everything twice." Maya smoothed the crisp white linen, grateful she'd finished her regular housekeeping duties early. The ballroom buzzed with focused energy as workers hung crystal decorations that caught the light, creating tiny rainbows on the walls. "Maya." Eli's warm voice made her turn. He stood in his usual well-fitted suit, though his tie was slightly loosened. "The room looks beautiful." "Thank you," she said, trying to keep her voice professional despite the flutter in her chest. "Though it's everyone's hard work, not just mine." "Of course." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "But I notice you have quite an eye for detail." Before Maya could respond, a man in an expensive suit called out, "Mr. Whitaker, a moment about the donor projections?" "Duty calls," Eli said with an apologetic shrug. "But I hope—" "Mr. Whitaker!" The man's voice grew more insistent. "Coming, James." Eli gave Maya one last warm look before striding away to join a growing cluster of important-looking people near the stage. Maya returned to adjusting table settings, but she felt Mrs. Hargrove's sharp gaze following her every move. The hotel manager's heels clicked against the wooden floor as she approached. "Maya," Mrs. Hargrove said, her voice honey, sweet but her eyes cold. "A word?" They stepped into a quiet corner near the service entrance. Mrs. Hargrove smoothed her already perfect gray suit. "I couldn't help but notice your familiar interaction with Mr. Whitaker." She raised one perfectly plucked eyebrow. "We wouldn't want any gossip to arise. It could be quite uncomfortable for everyone involved." Maya's spine stiffened. "Mr. Whitaker was just being polite about the decorations." Mrs. Hargrove's smile didn't reach her eyes. Well, do remember that the Lake Willoughby Grand has certain standards to maintain. We wouldn't want anyone getting the wrong idea about our staff's professionalism. Before Maya could respond, Carol called out from across the room. Maya, we need help with the ice sculptures. Excuse me, Maya said firmly, walking away from Mrs. Hargrove's disapproving stare. The next hour passed in a blur of last-minute preparations. As the sun began to set, Maya heard a familiar gravelly voice from the hallway. Where's my favorite grease monkey? Harold's teasing tone carried into the ballroom. Mr. Harold! Jonah's excited reply echoed off the walls. Maya smiled, heading toward the door. Harold stood in his cleanest work shirt, still sporting a few engine grease stains. Jonah bounced beside him, wearing his favorite yellow rain slicker despite the clear evening sky. Thanks for picking him up from school, Maya said, giving Harold a quick hug. I just need to finish up here and grab my things from the staff kitchen. No rush, Harold said, settling into one of the lobby's plush chairs. Me and the kid can wait right here. Been teaching him about carburetor maintenance today. Figure that'll keep him talking for a while. Mommy, I learned so much. Jonah started, but Maya noticed him fidgeting with the pocket of his slicker. Did you remember to use your inhaler after playing outside? She asked. Jonah's eyes widened. Maya sighed, reaching into her apron pocket. Here, take mine for now. I'll get my spare from the kitchen when I grab my bag. I'll keep it safe, Jonah promised solemnly, clutching the inhaler. I know you will, mijo. Now stay with Mr. Harold while I finish up. It won't take long. Maya hurried toward the staff kitchen, her mind already on the evening ahead. The first guests would arrive soon, and there were still a few details to perfect. In the lobby, Harold launched into a story about an old Chevy he'd restored, but Jonah's attention wandered. Through the ballroom's open doors, he could see people setting up a microphone on the small stage. His eyes lit up when he spotted Eli walking toward it. And then the transmission just about fell right out, Harold continued, not noticing as Jonah slowly edged away from the chair. Jonah watched Eli tap the microphone, speaking quietly into it. Testing, 1, 2. The sound echoed through the nearly empty ballroom. Looking back at Harold, who was now deep in conversation with the front desk clerk about classic cars, Jonah made his decision. He'd just give Mommy's inhaler to Mr. Eli to hold. That way, it would be safe until she came back. Plus, he really wanted to show Eli how he'd fixed his toy car's wobbly wheel all by himself. Clutching the inhaler tightly, Jonah slipped through the ballroom doors. The polished floor gleamed beneath his sneakers as he made his way toward the stage. Everything looked different from this angle. Bigger, fancier, like something from one of his storybooks. Eli stood on the stage, reviewing some notes while a technician adjusted the microphone stand. He hadn't noticed the small figure approaching the steps, inhaler held out like a precious offering. The late sunlight streaming through the tall windows caught the crystal decorations, sending sparkles dancing across Jonah's path as he climbed the first step toward Eli. Eli adjusted the microphone stand, tapping it twice with his finger. Testing, 1, 2. The sound echoed through the nearly empty ballroom as the catering staff arranged the last of the appetizer trays. He glanced down at his notes one more time, rehearsing the key points of his speech about the Foundry project. A small movement caught his eye. There, climbing the stage steps with careful determination, was Jonah. The boy clutched something in his hand, Maya's blue inhaler, and wore his favorite yellow raincoat despite being indoors. Well, hello there, young man, Eli said warmly, crouching down to Jonah's level. That's quite an important delivery you've got there. Jonah nodded seriously, his eyes bright with purpose. It's for Mommy. But, he hesitated, looking around at the fancy decorations and the small crowd of early arrivals who had begun to filter in. Can I tell you something first? Of course. Eli smiled, noting how the boy's shoelaces had come untied again. Several guests had paused their conversations to watch the sweet interaction between the billionaire and the child, phones already out to capture what they assumed would be a heartwarming moment. Jonah stepped closer to the microphone, which was still live, and spoke in what he thought was a whisper, but came out crystal clear through the speakers. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The words hung in the air, for one frozen second, before the reaction rippled through the room. Gasps echoed off the high ceiling. Phones shifted from casual recording to intense documentation. The catering staff stopped mid-task, trays suspended in mid-air. Eli's heart dropped as he saw Maya burst through the service entrance, her face transforming from concern to horror as she took in the scene, the phones, the whispers. Her son on stage, with the man everyone in town was talking about. "Jonah!" Maya rushed forward, her shoes clicking rapidly across the polished floor. "Baby, what are you doing up there?" "I brought your medicine," Jonah said proudly, holding up the inhaler. "And I told Mr. Eli what you said about daddies who keep promises." Maya's face flushed deep red as she reached the stage. "Oh, sweetheart, no, that's not. I meant." She knelt beside him, her voice trembling slightly. "Remember what we talked about? How God is our Father who sends helpers? And how good men who keep their promises are like daddies?" Jonah's brow furrowed in confusion. "But you said Mr. Eli was good and kept promises, so isn't he?" The whispers grew louder. Maya could hear fragments that made her stomach twist. Hotel maid. Secret child. All these years. Eli stepped forward, his face concerned but calm. "Maya, let me help explain." "No." Maya cut him off, her voice tight. "No explanations needed." She grabbed Jonah's hand, perhaps a bit too firmly. "We need to go, now." "But Mommy?" "Now, Jonah." Her tone left no room for argument. She could feel Mrs. Hargrove's eyes burning into her back from across the room, could sense the phone still recording every moment of her humiliation. Eli tried once more, his voice low and gentle. "Please, let's talk about this. We can set things straight." But Maya was already moving, practically running toward the exit with Jonah in tow. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment and anger. At herself for not being clearer with Jonah, at the situation, at the whole unfair world that would twist an innocent child's words into scandal. As they burst through the hotel's front doors, the first fat drops of rain began to fall. Maya didn't slow down, didn't look back. She just gripped Jonah's hand tighter and hurried down the wet sidewalk toward home. Behind them, Eli stood under the hotel's awning, watching their retreating figures through the strengthening rain. His hands hung helplessly at his sides, the speech notes now crumpled in his fist. He could still hear the buzz of excitement from the ballroom behind him, could practically feel the story spreading through the small town's gossip network like wildfire. The rain picked up, drumming against the awning above him as Maya and Jonah disappeared around the corner, leaving him alone with the weight of words meant for his ears only, words that would now echo far beyond this moment, beyond his control to protect them. Maya's phone buzzed again, vibrating against her nightstand for what felt like the 100th time that morning. She pulled her pillow over her head, trying to block out the constant notifications, but the damage was already done. Sleep had abandoned her hours ago when the first message arrived. Jonah's soft snores drifted from his bedroom down the hall. At least he was getting some rest, blissfully unaware of the storm his innocent words had unleashed. With trembling fingers, Maya finally reached for her phone. The screen lit up with a flood of texts, each one making her stomach twist tighter. "Did you see the news? Are you okay, honey? Call me ASAP. Praying for you." She opened her social media feed, immediately regretting the decision. The headlines jumped out like accusations. Breaking: Billionaire's secret love child revealed at Lake Willoughby Gala. Whitaker Foundation scandal. Hotel maid claims paternity. Sources close to hotel. Question: mother's motives. Maya's chest tightened. She reached for her inhaler, taking a deep breath of the medicine. This couldn't be happening. One misunderstood comment from her 6-year-old son had turned into a circus overnight. Her phone rang, the hotel's number. With shaking hands she answered. "Maya, this is Mrs. Hargrove." The manager's voice was clipped, formal. "I need you to come in immediately to discuss this situation." "Mrs. Hargrove, I can explain. It's all just a misunderstanding." I'm sure it is, Mrs. Hargrove cut in. However, given the serious nature of these allegations and the hotel's reputation, you're suspended pending review. We need to investigate any potential moral concerns. Maya's throat went dry. Suspended? But I need this job. I haven't done anything wrong. We'll discuss this in person. And Maya? I've received word that Child Protective Services was contacted by a concerned citizen. You may want to prepare for their visit. The line went dead before Maya could respond. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone dropping into her lap as tears welled up. CPS? Someone had called CPS? A knock at the front door made her jump. Maya wiped her eyes quickly and pulled on her robe. Through the peephole, she saw Eli Whitaker standing on her small porch, looking as put together as ever despite the early hour. She opened the door just enough to see him clearly. Mr. Whitaker, Maya, please, let me help. His voice was gentle but urgent. I have a legal team ready to handle this. We can stop these rumors before they get worse. She noticed the dark circles under his eyes. Had he slept at all? I can't accept your help. This is my mess to fix. It's our mess, he insisted. Those vultures are attacking both of us. 3 major donors have already pulled their support for the Foundry project, citing moral considerations. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. But forget about that. I'm worried about you and Jonah. No one should have to face this alone. Maya's grip tightened on the doorframe. Part of her wanted to accept his offer, to let someone else shoulder this burden for once. But her pride and independence, the same drive that had kept her going as a single mother all these years, held her back. I appreciate what you're trying to do, she said carefully. But getting more involved with you right now will only make things worse. People already think I'm trying to trap you for your money. Since when do you care what people think? Eli challenged, taking a step closer. The woman who stopped to help a stranger in the rain didn't worry about appearances. That was different. Maya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware she was still in her robe. I was just being kind. I didn't know you were. She gestured vaguely at his expensive suit. A target? He smiled sadly. Neither did I, until I built my first company. But Maya, you have to let me help. If not for yourself, then for Jonah. CPS involvement is serious. At the mention of Jonah, Maya felt her resolve wavering. She could handle losing her job, could weather the gossip and sideways glances. But the thought of anyone questioning her fitness as a mother made her blood run cold. Mommy? Jonah's sleepy voice called from inside. Who's at the door? Just a minute, sweetheart, Maya called back. She turned to Eli, her voice dropping to a whisper. I need time to think, please. Eli nodded, understanding in his eyes. At least take my card. My personal number's on the back. Call any time, day or night. He pulled out a business card and held it out. Maya hesitated before taking it, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her hand, and she quickly stepped back. Thank you, she managed. I'll think about it. Eli turned to leave, but paused under the dripping eaves of her small porch. He looked back at her, his expression a mix of frustration and determination. Water dripped steadily behind him, marking time in the heavy silence between them. Maya closed the door softly, pressing her forehead against the cool wood. Through the window, she watched Eli's figure retreat to his car, disappearing into the gray morning light. Mommy? Jonah appeared at her side, rubbing his eyes. Can we have pancakes? Maya pulled him close, breathing in the sweet smell of his hair. Of course, baby. Pancakes sound perfect. As she moved toward the kitchen, her phone buzzed again. She ignored it, focusing instead on measuring flour and sugar, on her son's chattering voice, on anything but the storm gathering around them. Maya's fingers traced the rim of her teacup as she sat at Pastor Ruth's worn kitchen table. The afternoon rain drummed steadily on the roof, creating a soothing rhythm that contrasted with her churning thoughts. Steam rose from the cup of chamomile tea Pastor Ruth had insisted she drink for her nerves. Child, you haven't touched your tea, Pastor Ruth said, sliding a plate of cookies closer. Her kind eyes crinkled with concern. "And those circles under your eyes tell me you haven't slept either." Maya managed a weak smile. "I turned my phone off after the 20th message, but I can't hide forever." A gentle knock at the door made Maya tense. Pastor Ruth patted her hand before walking to answer it. Eli Whitaker stood in the doorway, his usual polished appearance slightly rumpled, as if he too had been up all night. Harold Ortiz stood beside him, arms crossed and expression guarded. "Come in, both of you," Pastor Ruth said, ushering them inside. "The kettle's still hot." Eli pulled out a chair across from Maya but waited for her small nod before sitting. Harold remained standing, leaning against the counter with the protective air of a watchful father. "Maya," Eli began, his voice soft but determined, "I've spent the morning putting together a plan. If you're willing to hear it?" She wrapped her hands tighter around her warm cup. "I'm listening. I want to create what I'm calling a community care task force. First, my legal team will handle any false claims or harassment. They're already monitoring social media and news outlets." "I don't need expensive lawyers," Maya started, but Eli held up a hand. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about Jonah, and it's about the truth. The project matters too much to let rumors destroy it." Pastor Ruth settled back into her chair. "He's right, dear. Sometimes accepting help is the strongest thing we can do." Eli continued. "Second, we need to change the narrative. Instead of hiding or denying, we show the community who you really are." He pulled out a notebook. "I'm thinking we host a free tire check event in the church parking lot this Saturday. Simple service, no strings attached." Harold finally spoke up. "I've got some spare equipment at the garage. Could bring it over? Teach some basics?" Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, touched by their willingness to help. But something still nagged at her. "Why are you doing all this? You could just deny everything and walk away. Start your project somewhere else." Eli's expression softened. "Because running away isn't the answer. And because I saw who you are that night in the rain, someone who stops to help without expecting anything in return. The town needs to see that too. The question is," Pastor Ruth added gently, "what do you want, Maya?" Maya stood up and walked to the window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. Behind her, she could hear the quiet clink of Pastor Ruth's teacup, Harold's work boots shifting on the floor, the scratch of Eli's pen on paper, people who cared, waiting for her answer. She turned back to face them. "I have one condition." Her voice came out stronger than she expected. "No pity money, no paying me to go away quietly. If we do this, I want to serve the community, not hide from it." "Wouldn't dream of suggesting otherwise," Eli said, and she could see the respect in his eyes. Harold pushed off from the counter. "Well, if we're doing this Saturday, I better start checking which tools we'll need. Maybe that tire pressure gauge you're always borrowing, Maya?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I return it, eventually." They spent the next hour planning the details. Pastor Ruth would handle church announcements and refreshments. Harold listed equipment they'd need. Eli made calls to arrange proper insurance coverage and media guidelines. Maya watched them work, these people who had stepped up to support her without hesitation. The rain was finally letting up outside, patches of blue appearing between the clouds. She stood at the window again, uncertain whether this new partnership would prove to be the healing her community needed or just create more complications. "Maya," Pastor Ruth called softly, "the tea's getting cold." She returned to the table, picking up her cup. It was still warm after all. "So," Harold said, reviewing his list, "Saturday at 10? I'll bring the tools by early. I'll have the press release ready tonight," Eli added. "Maya, would you like to review it first?" She nodded, grateful for the consideration. "Thank you, all of you." Pastor Ruth reached over and squeezed her hand. "That's what community is for, dear. Now, who's going to help me finish these cookies?" Through the kitchen window, the clouds continued to part, letting scattered sunlight paint patterns on the lawn. Maya wrapped her hands around her teacup, feeling its lingering warmth, and watched the sky slowly clear. Saturday morning painted Lake Willoughby in golden light. The church parking lot buzzed with activity as volunteers set up orange safety cones and unfolded long tables. The air held that perfect crispness that made everyone move a little faster, breathe a little deeper. Maya pulled up in her old Honda, Jonah bouncing in the back seat with his box of stickers. Her heart did a funny little skip when she spotted Eli directing traffic in jeans and a plain work shirt, so different from his usual suits. He caught her eye and smiled, causing her to quickly look away and focus on parking. "Ready for our big day, buddy?" Maya asked, helping Jonah with his seatbelt. "Can I give out the stickers now?" Jonah clutched his precious box of Lug Nut Hero badges, practically vibrating with excitement. "Let's get everything set up first." Maya smoothed his wild hair. "Remember what we practiced?" "Safety first," Jonah declared, puffing out his chest. The lot filled quickly with curious onlookers and local families. Harold had brought over jack stands and basic tools from his garage, arranging them in neat stations. A group of veterans in worn military caps clustered near the brake check area, trading quiet jokes as they organized their equipment. Maya took her place at the tire-changing station, where 3 young mothers already waited. She recognized Sarah from the grocery store, bouncing a baby on her hip while her minivan sat waiting. "Okay, ladies," Maya said, clapping her hands together. "Who's ready to learn how to handle a flat?" She kept her voice bright, ignoring the phone cameras that occasionally pointed her way. As Maya demonstrated proper jack placement, she fell into a comfortable rhythm. This was what she knew, the solid feel of tools in her hands, the satisfaction of teaching others. She guided Sarah through loosening lug nuts, explaining torque patterns while the baby cooed from his carrier. "My husband always handled this stuff," one woman admitted, watching intently. "But since the divorce—" "You've got this," Maya assured her. "It's just physics and the right tools. Here, feel how the wrench acts as a lever?" Across the lot, the veterans had drawn their own crowd. Maya caught glimpses of Eli moving between groups, asking questions, listening intently. He had a way of making each person feel heard that reminded her of that rainy night with the flat tire. A local news van pulled up, and a reporter began interviewing participants. Maya kept her head down, focusing on her students, but she couldn't help overhearing snippets. Community coming together. End of Chapter 8. Practical skills for single parents. Veterans sharing expertise. Around noon, the smell of grilling hot dogs drew people to the food tent. Maya was demonstrating tire pressure checks when she heard it, a stage-whispered comment from the cashier to her friend. "Must be nice, trapping a rich man with a kid. Some girls have all the luck." Maya's hands froze on the pressure gauge. Heat crept up her neck as nearby conversations awkwardly stuttered to a halt. She started to stand, not sure what she'd say, when Eli's voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me." His tone was quiet but carried clearly. He stood at the cashier's table, tall frame radiating calm authority. "I need to correct that statement. Maya Alvarez is one of the most capable, honorable people I've met. She's helped dozens of stranded motorists without asking anything in return. Today, she's teaching valuable skills to our community, skills she learned from her father, who served this town for 30 years. The cashier's face flamed red. Eli continued, his voice gentle but firm. "If you'd like to learn about tire safety, Maya's station is open to everyone. No judgment, just knowledge shared freely." He walked away, leaving a wake of murmurs. Maya bent back to her work, blinking hard, but a small hand tugged her sleeve. Jonah stood there, sticker box clutched tight. "Mommy, can I give out heroes now? Harold says it's time." Maya smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Go for it, baby. Remember what we said about being polite?" Jonah nodded solemnly before scampering off. Soon the lot rang with children's laughter as they proudly displayed their Lug Nut Hero badges, Jonah carefully explaining to each recipient why they'd earned their sticker. The afternoon passed in a blur of demonstrations and questions. Maya's throat grew hoarse from explaining, but satisfaction warmed her chest every time a woman successfully completed a tire change. The veterans looked equally pleased with their brake check students. As the sun began to slide toward evening, families packed up their new knowledge and tools. The news van drove away, and volunteers began collecting safety cones. Maya's feet ached, but a good kind of tired settled in her bones, the kind that came from honest work and helping others. She found Jonah curled up in Harold's lawn chair, empty sticker box in his lap. "Ready to head home, my little hero? Can we do it again, next week?" Jonah asked through a yawn. "We'll see." Maya gathered their things, including the familiar blue thermos someone had filled with fresh coffee. She buckled a drowsy Jonah into his car seat, then slid behind the wheel. As they drove home in the gathering dusk, Maya glanced at her son in the rearview mirror. His eyes drooped, but a proud smile still played on his lips. The blue thermos sat snug in the cup holder between them, a reminder of how this all started. For the first time since the gala, Maya felt her shoulders truly relax. Maya sat at her small kitchen table, sorting through the pile of mail that had accumulated over the past week. Jonah's cartoons played softly in the background while he munched on cereal, occasionally making zooming noises with his spoon as if it were a tiny airplane. The usual stack contained the expected items: a phone bill, grocery store coupons, and a flyer from Pastor Ruth about the upcoming bake sale. But one envelope made her pause. The hospital logo stared back at her from the corner of the stark white paper. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, remembering that terrifying night in spring when Jonah's asthma had sent them rushing to the emergency room. She'd been making payments whenever she could, but the balance was still substantial. Maya unfolded the statement, bracing herself for the numbers. Her eyes widened. Across the bill, in bold red letters, was stamped, "Paid in full." "That can't be right," she whispered, double-checking the account number. "Jonah, honey, can you turn down the TV a bit?" She reached for her phone and dialed the hospital's billing department, drumming her fingers nervously on the table while wading through the automated system. "Billing office, this is Sharon speaking. How may I help you?" "Hi, I'm calling about account number 247-893. There seems to be a mistake on my statement." "Let me pull that up for you." Keys clicked in the background. "Ah yes, the Alvarez account. The balance was paid in full last Thursday by an anonymous donor." Maya's stomach clenched. "Anonymous donor? Can you tell me anything about who made the payment?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. The donor specifically requested confidentiality." "Is there something wrong with the payment?" "No, thank you. I think I know who it was." Maya ended the call, her face flushing with a mix of emotions. She grabbed her keys and jacket. "Come on, Jonah. We need to drop you at Harold's a little early today." "But Mom, my show's not over." "I'll record it for you, buddy. Please, get your backpack." 20 minutes later, after leaving Jonah with Harold, Maya marched through the hotel's front doors. The morning staff knew her well enough to barely glance up as she made her way to the cafe where she knew Eli often had his morning coffee. Sure enough, there he sat in the corner, laptop open, suit jacket draped over the chair beside him. He looked up and smiled when he saw her, but his expression quickly shifted when he caught her stormy look. "You had no right," Maya said, keeping her voice low but firm as she stood at his table. Eli closed his laptop. "Maya, good morning. Would you like to sit?" "No, I wouldn't. Why did you pay Jonah's hospital bill?" "Ah." He sat back, his face carefully neutral. "I thought it might help." "Help? You went behind my back. You looked into my private medical bills without asking me first." "That wasn't my intention." Eli gestured to the empty chair. "Please, let me explain." Maya reluctantly sat, but her posture remained rigid. "I'm listening. When you helped me that night in the rain, you refused payment. You told me to pay it forward. That's all I was trying to do. By digging into my financial situation? By making me feel managed?" Maya's voice cracked slightly. "I've taken care of Jonah by myself since day one. I don't need someone swooping in to fix everything." "Maya, I respect your independence. I just wanted to help." "I know." She cut him off, shaking her head. "But help means asking first. It means treating me like a partner, not a charity case." A server approached with fresh coffee, saw their tense expressions, and quietly retreated. "You're right," Eli said softly. "I should have asked. I'm used to solving problems directly, but that's not always the right approach." "No, it's not." Maya stood up, smoothing her uniform skirt. "I appreciate the gesture, Eli, really. But next time you want to help, talk to me first. I'm not one of your business projects to be managed." "Maya, wait." But she was already walking away, her steps quick and purposeful. She made it to the staff hallway before letting out a shaky breath, leaning against the wall for a moment to collect herself. Back in the cafe, Eli sat alone at his table, watching raindrops race down the window pane. His coffee grew cold, untouched, as he stared at the gray morning beyond the glass. The community room at Lake Willoughby First Methodist needed a fresh coat of paint badly. Years of Sunday school classes, potlucks, and town meetings had left the walls scuffed and faded. Pastor Ruth had called Maya that morning, her voice warm, but leaving no room for argument. "The paint's already bought, dear. Come buy it too. Sometimes the best medicine for a troubled heart is a brush and a blank wall." So here Maya stood, wearing old jeans and a faded t-shirt, tying back her dark hair while Ruth opened windows to let in the afternoon breeze. The pastor hummed as she arranged drop cloths across the worn wooden floor. "I think we'll start with the far wall," Ruth said, pointing with her cane. "The sun hits it just right." The door creaked open, and Maya's heart skipped when Eli walked in carrying paint rollers and an extension pole. He wore worn jeans too, and a simple gray t-shirt that made him look more human than the suits she usually saw him in. Their eyes met, and the tension from their argument hung between them like cobwebs. "Pastor Ruth," he said quietly. "Where would you like these?" "Over by Maya, dear. You two can handle the high parts while I supervise from my perch." Ruth settled into her favorite wooden chair, producing a thermos of coffee from seemingly nowhere. "I'm excellent at supervision." Maya couldn't help but smile at the pastor's transparent matchmaking. She took a roller from Eli, their fingers brushing briefly. The touch sent a small shock through her arm. They worked in silence at first, the soft swish of rollers against wall the only sound besides Ruth's occasional humming. The pale yellow paint brightened the room immediately, like captured sunshine. "I'm sorry about the hospital bill," Eli said suddenly, not looking at her. "I should have asked first." Maya dipped her roller, considering her words. "It's not about the money, it's about control," he finished. "I know, I have a habit of trying to fix things." "Some things don't need fixing," she said softly. "Sometimes people just need to be heard." Eli nodded, reaching up to catch a drip before it could fall. "In foster care, fixing things was how I survived. If I could solve problems, make myself useful, maybe they'd keep me." Maya's roller stopped mid-stroke. She turned to look at him, really look at him, for the first time since their argument. His face was focused on his work, but she could see the old pain in the set of his jaw. "How many homes?" she asked gently. "6, before I aged out. Some were okay, some." He shrugged, but the gesture couldn't hide the weight of unspoken memories. "The last one was the worst. And the best in a way, because that's where I met Sergeant Brooks." Maya leaned against the ladder, paint forgotten. "What happened?" "It was winter. The foster father had been drinking. I was 15. Thought I could handle anything." Eli's voice grew distant. "He came at me with a broken bottle. But Sergeant Brooks was there. He did maintenance work for the family. He stepped between us, took the hit meant for me." The room felt very still. Even Ruth had stopped humming. "Aaron Brooks wrote me a letter before he shipped out," Eli continued. "Said, 'Keep your promises, kid. That's what makes a man.' Changed my life." Maya's throat felt tight. "The town did something similar for us, after Dad died. For a whole month, there was always food on our porch. Casseroles, bread, soup. Mrs. Chen from the pharmacy sent Jonah's inhaler refills without waiting for payment. People just showed up." "That's the kind of rich I want to be," Eli said softly, turning to face her. "Rich in community, in trust." Their eyes met, and Maya felt something shift in her chest, like a key turning in a long-stuck lock. They had drifted closer without realizing it, paint rollers forgotten in their hands. Eli reached up slowly, brushing a spot of yellow paint from her cheek with his thumb. His touch was gentle, tentative. Maya found herself leaning slightly forward, drawn by the warmth in his eyes. "Oh dear," Pastor Ruth called from across the room, breaking the spell. "Could one of you fetch more brushes from the supply closet? These bristles are simply refusing to cooperate." Maya stepped back, her cheeks warm. "I'll go," she said quickly, setting down her roller. As she headed for the door, she glanced back. Eli stood watching her, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Something flickered in his expression, hope, maybe, or understanding. Ruth's knowing chuckle followed Maya into the hallway. The old pastor had always had impeccable timing, for better or worse. Saturday morning dawned with golden promise, the sun burning away the last wisps of clouds that had lingered over Lake Willoughby all week. Maya stood in the church parking lot, clipboard in hand, watching volunteers set up folding tables and equipment stations. "Mom, look what Mr. Harold brought." Jonah raced past, waving a stack of colorful stickers shaped like lug nuts. Each one proclaimed, "Official Lug Nut Hero," in bold letters. "Those are perfect, sweetie." Maya ruffled his hair as he bounced on his toes. "Remember what we practiced? Give one to each person who learned something new." Jonah clutched the stickers to his chest like treasure. The lot filled quickly with curious families. Veterans in work shirts chatted with teens about basic maintenance. Young mothers gathered around Maya's station, where she demonstrated tire pressure checks and proper jack placement. "See? The frame has these special spots," Maya explained, pointing underneath a borrowed sedan. "Never put the jack under plastic parts. You want solid metal." A woman about Maya's age nodded eagerly. "I've always been scared to try this myself." "That's why we're here." Maya smiled, remembering her own father's patient lessons. "Everyone starts somewhere." Across the lot, Eli moved between groups, his sleeves rolled up, listening more than talking. He knelt beside a teenage girl, struggling with lug nuts, showing her how to position the wrench for better leverage. His genuine interest in each person drew them in, making the learning feel natural. The morning flowed into afternoon. Harold fired up a grill, filling the air with the scent of hot dogs and burgers. Children played tag between the parked cars, while their parents practiced oil checks. The atmosphere felt like a community fair, more than a training session. "Maya," Pastor Ruth called from her lawn chair command post. "Come see what your boy's up to." Jonah had created his own certification ceremony. Each participant had to demonstrate their new skill before receiving their sticker. He stood very straight, taking his responsibility seriously as a grandmother showed him how she'd learned to check her coolant level. "Perfect," he declared, carefully peeling off a sticker. "You're officially a lug nut hero now." Even Mrs. Chen from the pharmacy earned her sticker, beaming with pride after changing a tire under Maya's guidance. The local newspaper photographer captured the moment, along with shots of veterans teaching brake light checks to interested teens. As the afternoon wound down, dark clouds began building over the lake. The first fat drops fell just as the last tables were being folded. Everyone scrambled for cover, laughing as they dashed under the church's wide eaves. The summer squall passed quickly, leaving everything fresh and glistening. From inside the church came the sound of the choir warming up for Sunday service, their harmonies drifting through open windows. Maya stood at the edge of the grass, enjoying the post-rain coolness. She'd kicked off her shoes earlier while helping pack up, and the damp grass felt wonderful between her toes. "Successful day," Eli said quietly, appearing beside her. He'd removed his shoes too, his feet pale against the dark grass. "It really was." Maya smiled, watching Jonah show Harold his remaining stickers through the church window. "Thank you for trusting my idea." "Thank you for trusting me to help." Eli held out his hand as the choir began a slow hymn. "Dance with me?" Maya hesitated only a moment before taking his hand. They swayed together on the wet grass, not really dancing so much as holding each other and moving to the distant music. His hand was warm against her back, steady and sure. "I keep thinking about what Jonah said that night," Eli murmured. About good men who keep promises. Maya looked up at him, seeing the earnest question in his eyes. He has a way of cutting straight to the truth sometimes. I'd like to keep my promises to you both, he said softly. If you'll let me. The choir's voices swelled, and Maya found herself rising on tiptoe. Eli's free hand came up to cradle her cheek, and then they were kissing, gentle and unhurried, tasting of rain and possibility. The world narrowed to the press of his lips, the solid warmth of him, the way his thumb brushed softly across her cheekbone. When they finally pulled apart, Maya kept her eyes closed for a moment, holding the feeling close. Eli's forehead rested against hers, their breath mingling in the cooling air. I should get Jonah home for dinner, she whispered, though she made no move to step away. I know. Eli's thumb traced one final gentle arc along her jaw before he straightened. They gathered their shoes, sharing small smiles as they walked back toward the church. At the door, Eli caught her hand once more, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was both old-fashioned and completely sincere, making Maya's heart flutter. They parted reluctantly, both aware of something fragile but real taking root between them. Mommy, look how many stickers I have left, Jonah bounded over, breaking the moment. Can we do this again next week? Maya laughed, gathering him close. We'll see, baby, we'll see. Maya's Sunday morning routine usually started with a quiet cup of coffee and reading her devotional while Jonah slept in. But today, her phone buzzed relentlessly on the kitchen counter, lighting up with notification after notification. She picked it up, fingers trembling slightly, as she saw the flood of missed calls, text messages, and news alerts. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too confined. Her coffee sat forgotten, growing cold in the blue thermos. The first headline made her stomach drop. Breaking, private lab confirms paternity. Billionaire's secret child scandal proven. Below it was what looked like an official document, complete with letterhead and signatures. Maya's name was there, alongside Eli's, with scientific-looking percentages and terms she didn't fully understand. This isn't possible, she whispered, gripping the counter's edge. There was never any test. Her phone rang again, Carol from work. Maya answered, her voice barely steady. Carol? Maya, honey, have you seen it? It's everywhere. Mrs. Hargrove is on the warpath. As if summoned by her name, another call beeped through. The hotel's main office number. Maya's throat tightened. Carol, I have to go. That's the hotel calling. She switched lines. And Mrs. Hargrove's clipped tones cut through any greeting. Miss Alvarez, I'm calling to inform you that your employment at Lake Willoughby Grand is terminated, effective immediately. Mrs. Hargrove, please, this report is false. There was never any test. The grounds for termination are moral turpitude and bringing disrepute to this establishment. Your final check will be mailed. The line went dead before Maya could respond. Her phone buzzed. Again. An email from Child Protective Services. The subject line alone made her legs weak. Scheduled home visit, welfare check. She slid down to sit on the kitchen floor, reading through the bureaucratic language that boiled down to one thing. Someone had reported her as an unfit mother. The timestamps showed a pattern. Within hours of the fake lab report appearing online, someone had contacted CPS. The timing wasn't coincidental. More calls came in, numbers she didn't recognize. She made the mistake of answering one. Is it true you trapped Eli Whitaker? A voice demanded. How much money are you asking for? Maya hung up, but the questions kept coming via text. Did you plan this from the beginning? How many other rich men have you tried this with? Does your son know you're lying? Each message felt like a physical blow. She blocked numbers as fast as they came in, but new ones appeared instantly. Local news stations, radio shows, blog sites. Everyone wanted their piece of the story. A text from Pastor Ruth. We're here for you. Don't read the comments. Come to service? Maya couldn't bear the thought of facing the congregation, of seeing the sideways glances and hearing the whispers. Not today. Not when she felt this raw. Her phone lit up with Eli's name. She stared at it, emotions warring inside her. Part of her wanted to answer, to hear him say, this would all be okay. But another part, the part that had learned to protect herself through years of subtle prejudice and dismissal, held back. What if he believed it? What if he thought she had somehow engineered this? The call went to voicemail. Seconds later, a text. Maya, please, let me help. This is obviously fake. My lawyers are already working on it. She started typing several responses but deleted them all. What could she say? That she was scared? That after years of carefully building a life for herself and Jonah, it was crumbling because of a lie? That she didn't know who to trust anymore? A small voice came from the hallway. Mommy? Why are you sitting on the floor? Maya quickly wiped her eyes, forcing a smile for Jonah. He stood there in his Captain America pajamas, clutching his favorite toy car. Just taking a little rest, mijo. How about some breakfast? But as she stood to make Jonah's cereal, her phone buzzed with another message. This one was from Harold. Channel 5 news van parked outside the garage. They're asking questions about you and Eli. What do you want me to say? Maya's hands shook as she poured the milk. News vans. Reporters. How long before they found her apartment? How long before Jonah heard the cruel things people were saying? She glanced out the kitchen window. The sky had turned an ominous gray-green, heavy clouds, building up over the lake like a physical manifestation of the storm engulfing her life. The weather matched her mood, dark, threatening, with no clear end in sight. Jonah munched his cereal, oblivious to his mother's distress, making vrooming noises as he drove his toy car between bites. Maya watched him, her heart aching. He was innocent in all this. He didn't deserve to be at the center of a scandal, to have his words twisted and his life examined by strangers. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She silenced it without looking. The CPS email sat open on her screen, the words, scheduled home visit, seeming to grow larger the longer she stared at them. She knew their apartment was clean and safe, knew she was a good mother, but doubt crept in anyway. Would they see the water stain on the ceiling from last month's leak? Would they count the hours she worked? Would they talk to Mrs. Hargrove? The sound of distant thunder rolled across the lake. Maya hugged herself, feeling small and exposed in her own kitchen. Outside, the clouds continued to gather, dark and menacing. The morning light had vanished entirely now, leaving the apartment in premature twilight. On her phone's screen, the fake lab report continued to circulate, shared and reshared, commented on, and dissected by strangers who thought they knew her story. The carefully crafted lies looked so official, so convincing. How long would it take to prove they were false? And would anyone even care about the truth once it came out? Another rumble of thunder, closer this time. Jonah looked up from his cereal. Is it going to storm again, Mommy? Maya stared out at the gathering darkness, watching the trees bend in the strengthening wind. Yes, mijo, she said softly. I think it is. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, drumming against Maya's apartment windows with increasing intensity. That Wednesday night, the steady patter turned into a roar as the storm reached its peak. Water seeped through a crack in the ceiling, creating a steady drip near the kitchen counter. Maya placed another pot under the leak, the metallic ping of water drops echoing through the small space. She glanced at the clock. 11:43 p.m. The weather radio crackled with updates about rising river levels, but she tried to focus on the pile of job applications spread across her coffee table. A distant wail cut through the noise of the rain. Maya's head snapped up, recognizing the flood warning sirens. The sound grew louder, its eerie cry mixing with the howling wind outside. Mommy! Jonah's voice came from his bedroom, followed by a concerning wheeze. Maya rushed to his room, flicking on the light. Jonah sat up in bed, his chest rising and falling with visible effort. The familiar sight sent ice through her veins, an asthma attack. Baby? Where's your inhaler? She kept her voice calm despite the panic building in her chest. On the shelf, he managed, between labored breaths. Maya grabbed the inhaler, but when she tried to help him take a puff, he coughed and struggled to hold his breath. The wheezing got worse. A new sound caught her attention. Water dripping from Jonah's bedroom ceiling. The smell hit her then. Musty, dank, the unmistakable scent of mildew. Her heart raced. The mold could be making his asthma worse. "We need to get you to the hospital, sweetheart." She wrapped him in his yellow rain slicker and grabbed his emergency bag, the one she always kept packed for nights like this. The stairs down to the street were slick with rain that had blown in through the building's poorly sealed windows. Maya carried Jonah, taking each step carefully while trying to shield him from the worst of the drafts. When they reached the bottom, the full force of the storm hit them. Rain pelted sideways, driven by fierce gusts that nearly knocked Maya off balance. The street had become a shallow river, water coursing over the curbs. They'd made it halfway down the block when headlights cut through the darkness. A familiar black SUV pulled alongside them, and Eli's voice called out through an open window. "Maya, let me help, please." She clutched Jonah tighter, feeling him shiver against her despite the rain slicker. His breathing remained choppy and strained. "We're fine," she called back, but her voice cracked on the words. Eli put the SUV in park and stepped out into the downpour, not bothering with an umbrella. "The hospital's 15 blocks away. He needs to get out of this weather." Maya stopped walking but didn't turn around. The rain plastered her hair to her face, mixing with tears she hadn't realized were falling. I can't trust you anymore." "This isn't about trust right now," Eli said, his voice gentle even over the storm. "This is about Jonah." Another wheeze from her son made Maya's chest tighten. She knew Eli was right. Her pride wasn't worth risking Jonah's health. But the memory of that tabloid headline, the whispers and stares, the loss of her job, it all felt like a wall between them. "I've got this," she insisted, taking another step through the floodwater. "Maya." Eli's voice held something she'd never heard before, not pity, but raw pain. "Please." A particularly strong gust of wind nearly knocked them sideways. Jonah coughed harder, each breath a struggle. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the rain course down her face. Without looking at Eli, she turned toward the SUV. He rushed to open the back door, but she climbed in herself, settling Jonah on her lap. The sudden silence, as the door closed, was jarring after the storm's chaos. Eli drove carefully through the flooded streets, both hands tight on the wheel. Every few moments he glanced in the rearview mirror, but Maya kept her eyes focused on Jonah, counting his breaths, whispering soft encouragement. The emergency room entrance was awash in harsh fluorescent light. Before Eli could offer, Maya had the door open and was carrying Jonah toward the sliding doors. She heard car doors slam behind her but didn't look back. Inside, Maya sank onto a hard plastic bench in the waiting area, still holding Jonah close. His breathing hadn't improved, but at least they were out of the storm. She clutched his inhaler, trying another puff, even though she knew it wasn't helping enough. Through the emergency room's glass doors, she could see Eli's silhouette. He stood in the rain, hands in his pockets, watching. Despite everything that had happened, despite her telling him to stay away, he remained, a steady presence in the storm. Maya focused on Jonah, on the rhythm of his labored breathing, on the warmth of his small body against hers. She couldn't think about Eli right now, about the complications his presence brought to their lives, about the way her heart still lifted whenever she saw him, even as her mind screamed warnings. A nurse approached with a clipboard, and Maya began the familiar process of checking Jonah in. Through it all, she was acutely aware of the figure outside, standing sentinel in the deluge, refusing to leave them alone in the night. Gray morning light filtered through Pastor Ruth's kitchen window as Maya sat at the worn oak table, her fingers wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. The morning paper lay spread before her, its bold headlines making her stomach churn. Whitaker Project brings chaos to Lake Willoughby, and small-town peace shattered by Billionaire's drama. "Don't torture yourself, dear," Pastor Ruth said, reaching over to fold the newspaper closed. She slid her iPad across the table instead. "The town hall meeting is about to start. Eli asked me to make sure you watched." Maya's hand trembled slightly as she picked up her coffee. "I'm not sure I can." "You can, and you will," Ruth said firmly, pulling up a chair beside her. "Sometimes healing starts with facing our fears head-on." The live stream began, showing the familiar wood-paneled walls of the town hall. The room was packed with residents, reporters, and cameras. A quiet murmur filled the space until Eli stepped up to the podium. Maya's breath caught. He looked tired, his usually pristine suit slightly rumpled, his face drawn with worry. He adjusted the microphone, and the feedback echoed through Ruth's kitchen. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady despite the exhaustion evident in his stance. "I've called this meeting to address the situation that has overwhelmed our community these past weeks." Maya watched as he gripped the edges of the podium, his knuckles white. "The chaos that has descended upon Lake Willoughby is my responsibility alone. My presence, my name, my project, they've brought a spotlight that this town never asked for, and that spotlight has hurt good people who deserve better." The cameras clicked rapidly as he continued. "Maya Alvarez and her son Jonah are innocent victims of this situation. They are hard-working members of this community who have done nothing wrong. The rumors, the lies, the cruel speculation, none of it should have touched them." Maya's eyes stung as she watched him straighten his shoulders, looking directly into the cameras. "I'm here today to say this stops now. If you need someone to criticize, criticize me. If you need someone to blame, blame me. If you need someone to judge, judge me, but leave them in peace." Pastor Ruth reached over and squeezed Maya's hand as Eli continued. "To demonstrate my commitment to protecting both this community and the project's future, I am temporarily stepping back from my position on the foundation board. This will allow the project to proceed without the distraction of my personal involvement." The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Maya's heart clenched as she watched Eli raise his hand for silence. "This is not an abandonment of our goals. The Lake Willoughby Skills Foundry project will continue under the capable leadership of our local board members. The funding remains secure. The promises made to this community will be kept." He paused, and for a moment, Maya could have sworn his eyes found the camera that was streaming to Ruth's iPad, as if he knew she was watching. "I believe in this town. I believe in the power of second chances and fresh starts. Most importantly, I believe in keeping promises, even when it means taking difficult steps to protect those promises." The questions from reporters began flying. "Mr. Whitaker, are you confirming or denying the paternity claims? Is this temporary step back really a resignation? What about the alleged lab results?" Eli held up his hand again, his voice firm but calm. "I will not dignify false claims with a response. My focus is on ensuring that a good project and good people are not harmed by speculation and sensationalism. That's all I have to say today. Thank you." Maya watched as he stepped away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions that followed him. The live stream continued to show the chaos in the town hall, but she couldn't focus on it anymore. Her thoughts were a tumble of emotions: gratitude, guilt, admiration, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. "Well," Pastor Ruth said softly, closing the iPad cover, "that's what taking responsibility looks like." Maya stared into her now cold coffee. He shouldn't have had to do that. His project means everything to this town. The jobs, the training programs, everything we've been working toward. "Child," Ruth interrupted gently, "sometimes the measure of a person isn't in what they're willing to take, but in what they're willing to give up. That man just gave up his direct involvement in a multi-million-dollar project to protect you and Jonah from further harassment." The weight of it settled over Maya like a heavy blanket. She remembered Eli standing in the rain outside the ER, refusing to leave even when she'd pushed him away. She thought of all the small moments: teaching Jonah about cars, defending her to the gossiping cashier, working alongside everyone at the clinic day without a hint of superiority. "I don't know what to do with this," Maya whispered, her voice rough with emotion. Ruth patted her hand. "You don't have to do anything right now except breathe and trust that sometimes, when we can't see the path forward, God sends us people who can help clear the way." Through the kitchen window, Maya could see the sun finally breaking through the clouds that had dumped so much rain on their town. The light caught the droplets still clinging to Ruth's garden flowers, making them shine like tiny stars. "He's a good man," Maya said quietly, more to herself than to Ruth. "Yes," Ruth agreed, standing to refill their coffee cups. "And good men, as you once told Jonah, keep their promises." Maya sat in thoughtful silence, watching the sun slowly dry the rain-soaked world outside, while inside, something in her heart began to shift and settle into a new understanding. Maya sat in Pastor Ruth's cramped church office, sorting through donation receipts for the food pantry. The small desk lamp cast a warm glow against the darkening afternoon sky outside. Her fingers moved mechanically across the papers, her mind elsewhere, when a knock at the door made her look up. Lila Chen, Eli's lead investigator, stood in the doorway. Her usual crisp blazer was slightly rumpled, and she held a thick manila folder under her arm. "Got a minute, Maya?" Maya's stomach tightened, but she nodded. "Come in." Lila settled into the worn leather chair across from the desk, placing the folder between them. "We found something you need to see." She opened the folder and spread out several documents. "Remember that fake lab report that hit the tabloids? We traced it." Maya's hand stilled over the receipts. "Traced it where?" "To Clarity Communications, a PR firm in the city." Lila tapped a business card paperclip to one of the documents. "Specifically to Jessica Hargrove." "Hargrove?" Maya's voice sharpened. "As in Mrs. Evelyn Hargrove's niece?" "Yes." Lila's expression was grim. "We have emails, phone records, and a money trail. Jessica created the forgery at her aunt's request." Maya sank back in her chair, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. "Mrs. Hargrove? She planned this?" "She did." Pastor Ruth's voice came from the doorway. She stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. "Evelyn's downstairs in the sanctuary. Would you be willing to hear her out?" Maya's first instinct was to refuse, but something in Ruth's steady gaze made her pause. She nodded slowly. Minutes later, Mrs. Hargrove sat rigidly in the chair Lila had vacated, her perfectly manicured hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her usual imperious expression was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "The evidence is quite clear, Evelyn," Pastor Ruth said quietly. "The question now is what we do about it." Mrs. Hargrove's voice wavered slightly. I was protecting the hotel's reputation. We have standards to maintain. When that child made that ridiculous claim at the gala, I knew it would bring exactly this kind of scandal down on us." "So you created the scandal yourself?" Maya's voice was quiet but sharp. "You tried to destroy my reputation, put my job at risk, brought CPS to my door to protect the hotel's image?" "I didn't mean for it to go so far." Mrs. Hargrove's composure cracked slightly. "Jessica said a small story would discredit you quickly, and everything would blow over. But then it spread, and the media grabbed hold, and—" She trailed off, looking lost. Lila cleared her throat. "We have enough evidence for criminal charges: forgery, defamation, harassment." "Wait." Pastor Ruth held up a hand. "Perhaps there's another way." She turned to Mrs. Pastor Ruth held up a hand. "Hargrove. Evelyn, you've caused real harm here, but I believe in restorative justice over punishment. Are you willing to make this right?" Mrs. Hargrove looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "A public apology, for starters," Ruth said. "The truth needs to be known. And then," she smiled slightly, "I think 300 hours managing our church food pantry would be appropriate. The very one you once called an enabler of laziness, if I recall correctly." Color rose in Mrs. Hargrove's cheeks. That's... "It's more than fair," Maya said quietly. "You'll see the real people you hurt with your assumptions. The single mothers working 2 jobs, the veterans struggling to rebuild their lives, the children who just need a chance." She met Mrs. Hargrove's eyes. "The people Eli is trying to help." Something shifted in Mrs. Hargrove's expression. Her shoulders slumped slightly. Yes, you're right." She turned to Maya. "I am truly sorry. My actions were inexcusable." Maya studied the woman before her, no longer the intimidating hotel manager, but someone who had let fear and prejudice guide her choices. She thought of Eli, taking responsibility at the town hall, and felt something inside her soften slightly. "I accept your apology," Maya said, "and I support Pastor Ruth's suggestion." Mrs. Hargrove nodded, relief visible on her face. "I'll do whatever is necessary to make this right." As they worked out the details, Maya felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The truth was finally coming to light. More than that, she realized she'd been wrong about Eli. He hadn't been trying to manage or control her situation, he'd been working to uncover the truth, to protect her and Jonah, all while taking the public blame himself. Pastor Ruth caught her eye and smiled knowingly. "Sometimes," she said softly, "trust is rebuilt one small truth at a time." Maya nodded, feeling the first crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. She pulled out her phone, looking at Eli's last message from days ago. "I'm here when you're ready to talk." The social worker from Child Protective Services wore sensible shoes and carried a weathered leather portfolio. She introduced herself as Ms. Thompson and stepped carefully around the puddles, still drying on Maya's apartment floor from the recent flood. "I apologize for the mess," Maya said, moving a stack of towels from the couch. "We had some water damage." Ms. Thompson made notes on her clipboard, eyes scanning the modest but tidy living room. "I see you've already started cleanup efforts. That shows responsibility." Jonah sat at the kitchen table, coloring quietly, a rare stillness for him that made Maya's heart ache. He'd been subdued since the hospital visit, picking up on the tension around him. "Mrs. Alvarez." "Ms." Maya corrected gently. "I've never been married." "Ms. Alvarez." The social worker adjusted her glasses. "I have some letters here submitted on your behalf. Quite a few, actually." She pulled out a thick stack of envelopes. Maya recognized Harold's messy scrawl on one, Pastor Ruth's careful cursive on another. There were notes from Carol at the hotel, parents from Jonah's school, and what looked like half the church choir. Ms. Thompson read from Harold's letter. "I've known Maya Alvarez since she was knee-high to a grasshopper. That girl could rebuild an engine before she could drive. More important, she's raising that boy with more love and sense than most folks manage with two parents." The social worker's expression softened. "He goes on quite colorfully about your character." Pastor Ruth's letter spoke of Maya's dedication to the community food bank, her volunteer work teaching basic car maintenance to other single mothers, her unwavering integrity even when times were tough. "Mom?" Jonah's small voice broke in. "Can I show Ms. Thompson my room? I cleaned it all up." Maya nodded, and Jonah led the social worker down the short hallway, chattering about his toy cars and the solar system mobile hanging from his ceiling. His pride in his neat space brought tears to Maya's eyes. When they returned, Ms. Thompson was already closing her portfolio. "Ms. Alvarez, I'm closing this case." These letters, combined with my observations today, paint a clear picture of a loving, stable home. The recent media attention appears to be exactly what you stated, a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. After the social worker left, Maya sank onto the couch, relief making her limbs heavy. The knock that came an hour later was soft, hesitant. Eli stood in the hallway, his usual confident posture uncertain. "I heard CPS was coming today. I wanted to check." "They closed the case," Maya said, stepping back to let him in. "The community," they wrote letters. "Of course they did." Eli's voice was warm. "They know who you really are." He moved into the living room, taking in the modest space with genuine interest rather than judgment. His gaze landed on a framed photograph on the bookshelf, and he went very still. "Maya," he said quietly, "where did you get this picture?" She followed his eyes to the photo of a black man in military dress uniform, his smile warm and confident. "That's Jonah's father, Aaron Brooks. He died in Afghanistan before Jonah was born." Eli's hand trembled as he reached for the frame. "Sergeant Aaron Brooks? You knew him?" "I?" Eli's voice cracked. He sank into the nearest chair, still holding the photo. When I was 15, in foster care. There was a man, violent, when he drank. One night, it got bad. I ran out into the snow. Sergeant Brooks was driving past, saw me. He stepped between me and my foster father, got me somewhere safe. His fingers traced the glass. He wrote me a letter later. Just 3 words. Keep your promises. Maya pressed a hand to her mouth. That sounds exactly like him. I never knew he had a family. He saved my life that night, Maya. Everything I've built, everything I try to do for others. It started because one man stopped to help a scared kid. And now you're here, Maya whispered, helping his son. They sat in stunned silence, listening to the gentle tapping of rain against the window. The blue thermos that had started their story sat on the coffee table between them, a silent witness to life's extraordinary circles. Jonah's voice drifted from his room, where he was getting ready for bed, humming the hymn Maya often sang during storms. In that moment, the connection between past and present, between promises kept and promises yet to make, hung in the air as delicate and real as the rain. Morning light streamed through Maya's kitchen window, catching the steam rising from 2 coffee mugs on the worn table. The blue thermos sat between them, a silent reminder of their first meeting in the rain. Eli smoothed out a folder of documents, his fingers tracing the edges with care. I couldn't sleep last night, he said, his voice soft but clear. After seeing Aaron's photo, after everything, I kept thinking about promises. Maya wrapped her hands around her mug, the warmth steadying her. Me too. Aaron saved more than just my life that night. Eli continued, opening the folder. He taught me what real strength looks like. It wasn't about muscle or money. It was about showing up for people who need you. Maya nodded, remembering Aaron's gentle way of fixing things, whether it was a broken-down car or a broken spirit. That was Aaron. Always there, always steady. Eli pulled out a document with the foundation's letterhead. I want to honor that legacy. The Sergeant Aaron Brooks Promise Fund, dedicated to supporting veterans' families and creating real opportunities for change. He laid out the plans, pointing to carefully drawn diagrams of the old foundry. The main building will house training facilities, mechanics, welding, computer tech. Every student gets a living wage while they learn, and here, he tapped a section marked Auto Clinic. This is where we teach basic car maintenance to anyone who needs it. Maya leaned forward, studying the blueprints. The auto clinic space was larger than she'd imagined, with multiple bay doors and a classroom area. This is serious. Very, Eli agreed. And I want you to run it. Maya's head snapped up. What? You're perfect for it. You know cars inside and out, you can teach, and most importantly, you understand what it means to need a helping hand, but want to stand on your own feet. Jonah's voice drifted in from the living room where he was watching cartoons. The familiar sound grounded Maya as she considered the offer. The salary is competitive, Eli continued, sliding over another document. Full benefits, flexible hours for Jonah's schedule. But this isn't charity, Maya. I need someone who can make this work. Maya picked up the paper, her eyes widening at the figure. This is what you're worth, Eli finished firmly. What your skills and experience are worth. She set the paper down, studying his face. There was no pity there, no hidden agenda, just the same quiet determination she'd seen that first night in the rain. The foundry project was always about second chances, Eli explained. But meeting you, learning about Aaron, it's become something more. It's about keeping promises, the ones we make to others, and the ones we make to ourselves. Maya stood and walked to the window, looking out at the morning traffic. Her father's old toolbox sat on the shelf below, its dents and scratches telling stories of years of service. Aaron's photo smiled down from above it. When Aaron died, she said slowly, I promised myself I'd make him proud. Show Jonah what it means to live with purpose. She turned back to Eli. This could do that. Eli nodded, understanding in his eyes. It could do more. Think about all the single parents out there, all the veterans' kids who just need a chance. You could be their Aaron. Maya returned to the table, picking up the blueprint again. "We'd need good tools, quality equipment, already budgeted for, and certified instructors for the advanced classes. We'll hire the best. Community outreach programs? Free basic maintenance clinics?" "Built into the plan?" Eli smiled. "Along with emergency roadside assistance training." Maya traced the outline of the auto clinic with her finger, already seeing possibilities. "We could partner with local garages for apprenticeships. Harold would help." "Exactly." Eli leaned forward, enthusiasm lighting his features. "This isn't just about teaching people to fix cars. It's about building community, creating connections." Maya set the blueprint down and met his gaze. "Like Aaron did for you. Like you did for me in the rain," Eli corrected gently. "Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness change everything." Jonah's laughter bubbled in from the other room, a reminder of all that was at stake. Maya looked at the papers spread across her table, salary figures, building plans, training schedules. But more than that, she saw hope, real practical hope that could change lives. "Okay," she said, finally extending her hand. "Let's keep some promises." Eli stood and took her hand. Their handshake was firm, professional, but the air between them crackled with something deeper: shared purpose, mutual respect, and the profound gratitude of two people who understood exactly how much a single act of kindness could matter. The morning sun painted Lake Willoughby's waters in shimmering gold as volunteers gathered near the repaired bridge. Paint cans and brushes cluttered the grass, while ladders leaned against newly installed light posts. The air hummed with excitement and the metallic tang of fresh paint. Maya stood before a pristine white van, her hands on her hips as she studied the penciled outline of the Rain Angels Mobile Auto Care logo. The sketch showed a simple umbrella sheltering a tire, with 24/7 roadside help curved beneath in bold letters. "Is the blue too dark?" she asked, dipping her brush in the paint. Jonah, perched on an overturned milk crate, squinted at the color. "It's perfect, Mommy. Like your thermos." He clutched his own tiny brush, ready to help with the smaller details. Harold wheeled over with more supplies, his weathered face creased in a smile. "That boy's got an eye for color. Must get it from his mama." Maya carefully traced the umbrella's outline, her strokes steady and sure. The logo was more than just paint. It was a promise, like the one she'd made that rainy night with the thermos. "Help first, ask questions later." Across the street, Pastor Ruth directed a team hanging festival banners. "A little higher on the left," she called, waving her clipboard. "We want everyone to see these when they drive across tomorrow." The bridge itself stood proud against the morning sky, its fresh coat of paint gleaming. Workers had spent weeks reinforcing the structure, and now string lights draped across its length like delicate lace, waiting for tomorrow's celebration. Eli appeared briefly around midday, carrying boxes of supplies to the festival staging area. He caught Maya's eye and smiled, but kept his distance, understanding her need to make this moment her own. His quiet support spoke louder than words. "Look, Mommy," Jonah called, pointing to where he'd carefully painted a tiny star next to the umbrella. "For Daddy in heaven. He can help watch over people, too." Maya's brush faltered for just a moment, as her eyes misted. "That's perfect, baby. Daddy would love that." Carol from the hotel brought sandwiches for the volunteers, setting up an impromptu picnic in the shade. "My Henry's already asking when he can sign up for auto classes," she told Maya, passing her a plate. "Says he wants to be a rain angel when he grows up." Throughout the afternoon, more townspeople stopped by to admire the van and offer help. Mrs. Chen from the grocery brought cold drinks. The high school art teacher suggested adding reflective paint to make the logo pop at night. Even Mrs. Hargrove paused on her way to the food bank, nodding quietly before continuing on. "You've started something special here," Harold said, helping Maya touch up the lettering. "People need more than just mechanical fixes sometimes. They need to know someone cares enough to stop." As the sun began to set, the bridge lights flickered to life, casting warm reflections on the water below. Maya and Jonah stood back to admire their finished work. The rain angel's van gleamed under the evening sky, its fresh paint catching the golden light. "Can we do a test drive?" Jonah bounced on his toes, already reaching for the passenger door. Maya laughed, scooping him up instead. "Tomorrow, sweetheart." After the festival, she pressed a kiss to his paint, smudged cheek. "For now, let's go home and get cleaned up." They gathered their supplies while other volunteers finished securing banners and testing sound equipment for tomorrow's ceremony. The bridge lights twinkled like earthbound stars, promising new beginnings. Walking home, Maya carried a sleeping Jonah, his head heavy on her shoulder. She paused halfway, turning to look back at the bridge and her van parked nearby. The logo she and Jonah had painted together seemed to glow in the gathering dusk, a beacon of hope, just like Aaron would have wanted. The evening air carried the scent of fresh paint and possibility as final preparations wrapped up. Tomorrow would bring speeches and ceremonies, but tonight belonged to the quiet satisfaction of work, well done, and dreams taking shape. Saturday morning dawned with a gentle breeze that rippled across Lake Willoughby's surface. The sun climbed over the eastern hills, casting long shadows across the freshly painted bridge. Strings of white lights zigzagged between the lampposts, ready for evening celebrations. Pastor Ruth's choir assembled near the water's edge, their royal blue robes catching the morning light. They began warming up, their harmonies drifting over the growing crowd. "Amazing Grace" floated on the breeze, drawing more townspeople from their homes and parked cars. Maya stood behind the stage, adjusting her navy blazer, a gift from Carol that morning. Her fingers traced the rain angel's pin on her lapel, its silver umbrella catching the sunlight. Jonah bounced on his toes beside her, dapper in his pressed khakis and clip-on tie. "Mommy, can I honk the horn when we drive across?" Jonah tugged at her sleeve. "Just one time?" "Maybe." Maya smoothed his cowlick. "But first, we have to let all these nice people say their speeches." Harold appeared, wiping grease from his hands with a red shop rag. "Van's all set, fresh oil change, tires balanced, she's ready to roll." He winked at Jonah. "And the horn works perfect." The crowd swelled to fill both sides of the bridge. Maya spotted familiar faces everywhere. The moms from Tire Check Day, veterans in pressed uniforms, church members carrying casserole dishes for the potluck. Even Mrs. Wright had very. Hargrove stood near the back, looking uncomfortable but present, her food pantry apron declaring her new role. Mayor Wilson took the podium, his voice booming over the PA system. "Today marks more than just a bridge reopening. Today, we celebrate community rising stronger after the storm." Maya scanned the crowd but couldn't spot Eli. He'd insisted on staying in the background, letting the focus remain on the veterans and Rain Angel's launch. It was exactly like him, present but unassuming, supporting without overshadowing. The choir transitioned to "Bridge Over Troubled Water," making several older ladies dab at their eyes. Maya felt her own throat tighten. Just 6 months ago, she'd been changing a stranger's tire in the rain. Now here she stood, about to launch her own mobile assistance service. "And now," Mayor Wilson continued, "I'd like to welcome our veterans to cut the ribbon for the Lake Willoughby Skills Foundry." 5 veterans in pressed uniforms stepped forward, including Thomas Chen, who'd be teaching the first automotive class. They gripped the oversized scissors together, and with a clean snip, the red ribbon fluttered down. Applause thundered across the water. "Next," the mayor beamed, "the moment many have waited for. Maya Alvarez, please step forward to launch Rain Angel's mobile auto care." Maya's heart hammered as she walked to the podium, Jonah's small hand clutched in hers. The blue and silver Rain Angel's van gleamed behind them, its fresh logo catching the morning sun. "Thank you all," Maya began, her voice steady despite her nerves. Rain Angel started with a simple belief that everyone deserves help on dark, stormy nights. Thanks to the skip Aaron Brooks Promise Fund, we'll provide free emergency roadside assistance to stranded motorists, focusing on elderly and single parents. She spotted Eli then, standing quietly at the edge of the crowd. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a small nod that carried volumes of encouragement. "Jonah," Maya said, "would you like to help Mommy cut the ribbon?" But Jonah had other plans. He darted into the crowd, grabbed Eli's hand, and pulled him forward. "You too," he insisted. "You help fix things." A ripple of knowing chuckles moved through the crowd. Eli looked startled, but allowed himself to be led forward. Maya felt tears prick her eyes as Jonah positioned himself between them, reaching up to hold both their hands. "Together?" Eli asked softly. Maya nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The three of them gripped the scissors, and with a collective snip, the ribbon fell. Cheers erupted. The choir launched into "Oh Happy Day" as Maya unlocked the van's driver's door. Jonah scrambled into the passenger seat, practically vibrating with excitement. Through the windshield, she saw Eli step back into the crowd, giving her this moment to shine. Maya turned the key, and the engine purred to life. Slowly, she guided the van forward as people lined both sides of the bridge, clapping and cheering. Just before they reached the center span, Jonah's hand shot out and pressed the horn, one quick, joyful beep that echoed across the lake. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The sun caught the Rain Angels logo, making the silver umbrella seem to glow. As they crossed to the other side, the choir's voices soared over the water, carried by the morning breeze. The afternoon sun warmed the festive crowd gathered around the bridge. Paper streamers in blue and silver danced in the breeze, and the newly painted Rain Angels van gleamed near the stage. Maya stood off to the side, watching Jonah play with his toy cars on a picnic blanket spread by Harold. Eli stepped up to the microphone, his usual polished demeanor softened by something more personal. "Could Maya and Jonah Alvarez join me up here?" His voice carried across the crowd, gentle but clear. Maya's heart skipped. She hadn't expected this. Jonah looked up from his toys, eyes bright with curiosity. Harold gave them both an encouraging nod as they made their way through the crowd. The wooden steps creaked as they climbed onto the stage. Eli's expression held a warmth that made Maya's chest tighten. He adjusted the microphone stand, then did something unexpected. He knelt down, bringing himself to Jonah's eye level. From his pocket, he pulled out something that caught the sunlight, a simple silver chain with what appeared to be a lug nut threaded through it. The crowd murmured with curiosity, but Eli kept his focus on Maya and Jonah. "You know," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering, "this might look like just a piece of hardware, but a lug nut has one of the most important jobs in the world." He held it up, letting it spin gently. "It holds a wheel to its road, keeps everything steady when the path gets rough." Maya felt Jonah press against her side, his small hand finding hers. The choir stood silent behind them, their blue robes rustling in the breeze. "Maya," Eli continued, his voice growing softer, more personal despite the microphone, "that night you stopped to help me in the rain, you showed me what it means to keep promises to strangers, to hold steady when things get rough." He glanced at Jonah, then back to Maya. "I want to hold you two to hope, to be a steady presence in your lives." The lug nut caught another ray of sunshine, sending a brief flash across the stage. "Jonah," Eli's voice gentled further, "would you let me be your promise keeper? Not to replace anyone, but to be here for you both, whatever you need?" Maya felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She squeezed Jonah's hand, letting him know it was his choice to make. Jonah studied Eli's face with that serious expression he got when thinking hard about something important. Then, in his clear child's voice that carried across the crowd, he asked, "Can I call you Coach for now?" A ripple of tender laughter moved through the audience. Eli's smile grew wider, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I'd like that very much, buddy." The choir director raised her hands, and the first notes of "Amazing Grace" swelled behind them, rising into the afternoon air. The crowd burst into applause, their cheers mixing with the music. Pastor Ruth wiped her eyes from her seat in the front row. Harold's deep laugh boomed out over the clapping. Mrs. Hargrove, standing at the back near the food pantry booth she now managed, joined the applause with what looked like genuine joy. Maya watched Eli slip the chain around Jonah's neck, showing him how the lug nut was polished smooth so it wouldn't catch on his clothes. Her son beamed, holding it up to examine it in the sunlight. The simple piece of hardware somehow looked like treasure in his small hands. The applause continued to roll across the crowd like waves on the lake. The choir's voices lifted higher, carried by the breeze that rustled the festival banners and set the bridge lights swaying. In that moment, surrounded by music and joy and promise, Maya felt something settle in her heart, steady and sure, like a wheel finally finding its true road home. A gentle patter of raindrops started falling as the last echoes of applause faded away. The crowd didn't scatter. This was Lake Willoughby, after all, where rain was as natural as breathing. Instead, the unexpected shower seemed to add a touch of magic to the celebration. Maya stood on the stage, her fingers intertwined with Eli's, the silver lugnut necklace catching the late afternoon light. Jonah bounced on his toes between them, his yellow rain slicker already zipped up and ready for adventure. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pastor Ruth called from the microphone, "the bridge is officially open for dancing." The local band, set up under a striped awning, struck up a familiar tune. The melody of "Singing in the Rain" floated across the crowd, and people laughed at the perfect timing. Couples began moving onto the bridge, their feet tapping against the fresh pavement. Harold appeared with 3 umbrellas, but Jonah shook his head. "I like the rain, Mr. Harold." He spun in a circle, arms spread wide, his face turned up to catch the drops. Maya watched her son, her heart so full it ached. The past few weeks had been a storm of their own, accusations, fears, and revelations swirling like autumn leaves in a gale. But here they were, standing in the gentle rain, stronger for having weathered it together. Eli squeezed her hand. "May I have this dance?" he asked, his voice carrying that hint of playfulness she'd come to cherish. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They stepped down from the stage and walked hand in hand to join the other dancers on the bridge. The rain created a soft curtain around them, making the festive lights blur into warm, glowing halos. Eli pulled her close, one hand settling at her waist while the other held hers against his chest. They swayed to the music, their feet moving in perfect sync. Maya could feel his heartbeat under her palm, steady and sure, like his presence in their lives had become. "You know," she said softly, "that first night in the rain when I stopped to help with your tire? I never imagined we'd end up here. Dancing on a bridge in another rainstorm?" His eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Building something real, something that helps people." She glanced over at the foundry, its new sign proudly displaying Lake Willoughby Skills Center, Auto Clinic, something that honors Aaron's memory. Eli's expression softened. "He saved more than just my life that night. He showed me what it means to keep a promise, to stand up for what's right. Through you and Jonah, I get to pay that forward." The rain picked up slightly, but neither of them moved to seek shelter. Other couples danced around them, and children darted between the dancers, their colorful umbrellas bobbing like balloons in the wind. Maya tilted her face up to meet Eli's gaze. "Thank you for not giving up on us, even when I pushed you away." Instead of answering with words, Eli leaned down and kissed her. It was unhurried and sweet, full of promise and understanding. The rain tapped a gentle rhythm on their shoulders, and somewhere in the background, the band transitioned to a slower song. "Mommy, Coach Eli!" Jonah's excited voice broke through their moment. He tugged at their joined hands, practically vibrating with energy. "Can we get hot dogs? Billy says there's a cart with rainbow sprinkle cookies too." Maya laughed, wiping rain from her cheeks. "I suppose we should feed this growing boy of ours." "Lead the way, Chief Engineer," Eli said to Jonah, using the nickname that had stuck after their first afternoon fixing toy cars together. They walked off the bridge, Jonah between them, each holding one of his hands. He swung himself forward, letting them lift him over puddles while he giggled. Other festival-goers smiled as they passed, but there was no judgment in their looks now, only genuine warmth for the family finding its footing. The food stalls lined the riverbank, their striped awnings creating a cheerful marketplace atmosphere despite the rain. Strings of lights crisscrossed overhead, reflecting off the wet pavement and creating a magical glow. The air was rich with the smell of grilled food, sweet treats, and the clean scent of rain. 3 hot dogs, Eli ordered when they reached the cart. And I heard something about rainbow sprinkle cookies? Jonah's eyes lit up. Can I have 2, please? Maya started to say 1 would be enough, but Eli caught her eye with a gentle smile. It's a celebration, he said softly. She nodded, remembering his words from weeks ago. I want to be that kind of rich, the kind that feeds people, that builds community, that keeps promises. Looking at him now, in his rain-dampened suit, kneeling to help Jonah arrange his hot dog toppings just so, she knew he'd meant every word. They found a spot under a nearby awning, joining Harold and Pastor Ruth at one of the picnic tables. The rain continued its gentle symphony on the canvas above them, but nobody seemed to mind. If anything, it made the gathering feel more intimate, more special, their own little world wrapped in silver sheets of rain. As the evening settled around them, Maya looked at their small group. Jonah carefully eating his second cookie while telling Harold about his plans for a new toy car design, Pastor Ruth sharing her umbrella with a young mother who'd gotten caught in the rain, and Eli, his shoulder pressed warm against hers, listening to every word their son said as if it were the most important conversation in the world. This was what Aaron had meant about keeping promises, she realized. Not just the big moments, but the small ones too. The daily choice to show up, to care, to build something lasting out of love and hope and trust. Eli caught her watching him and smiled, reaching over to brush a raindrop from her cheek. His touch lingered, warm against her skin, and she leaned into it, no longer afraid to accept this gift of tenderness. Ready to head home? He asked softly, as Jonah's cookie-fueled energy began to fade. Maya nodded, gathering their things while Eli scooped up a sleepy Jonah. They said their goodbyes and stepped back into the light rain, walking arm in arm down the lamplit street. The festival continued behind them, music and laughter carrying on the wet breeze, but they moved at their own pace, savoring the quiet moment together. The autumn evening cast long shadows through Maya's kitchen window as she sat at her wooden table, surrounded by schedules and driver logs for Rain Angel's mobile auto care. Her laptop screen glowed with tomorrow's weather forecast. More rain coming, which meant they'd likely be busy. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, making notes in the margins about which areas needed extra coverage. Mom, is 32 divided by 8 the same as 4? Jonah called from his spot at the other end of the table, pencil tapping against his math worksheet. That's right, honey, Maya answered, glancing up with a smile. Want to check it with your counting cars? Outside, the rhythmic clink of tools against metal drifted in through the open window. Eli lay on his back under one of the Rain Angel's vans, his crisp business shirt exchanged for an old t-shirt that had seen better days. He'd come straight from a foundation meeting to help with a transmission issue, not even stopping to change. The counting cars are sleeping, Jonah declared seriously, carefully writing his answer. But I did it in my head like Coach showed me. Maya's heart warmed at the way Jonah had taken to calling Eli Coach. It fit somehow better than rushing into Dad when they were all still finding their way together. The past few weeks had settled into a comfortable pattern that felt both new and familiar at the same time. The screen door creaked, and Eli stepped inside, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Think I found the problem, he said. Just needs a new seal. I can pick one up tomorrow after the board meeting. You don't have to do that, Maya started, but Eli just gave her that patient look she was coming to know well. I want to, he said simply. Besides, Harold's teaching me more about transmissions. Did you know he used to race cars back in the 70s? Really? Jonah's head popped up from his homework, eyes wide with interest. Really, Eli confirmed, washing his hands at the sink. He promised to show us some old pictures next time we're at the garage. Maya watched as Eli dried his hands and then moved naturally through her kitchen, pulling down mugs for evening tea. It still amazed her sometimes how this brilliant businessman who could command boardrooms had chosen to spend his evenings helping with homework and van repairs in their modest kitchen. Done, Jonah announced, holding up his math worksheet triumphantly. Can I help make dinner? Homework all checked? Maya asked, knowing the routine. I'll look it over while you two get started, Eli offered, taking Jonah's paper. He sat down in what had become his chair, the one with the slightly wobbling leg that he kept promising to fix but never did, as if its imperfection made it more endearing. Maya and Jonah moved around each other with practiced ease, pulling out ingredients for a simple pasta dinner. The radio played softly in the background, some old country song about rain and redemption that made Maya smile. These moments felt precious. Jonah's chatter about his day at school, Eli's thoughtful comments on the homework, the smell of garlic bread warming in the oven. The Smith family called earlier, Maya mentioned as she stirred the sauce. They wanted to thank Rain Angels again for helping Sarah when her car broke down last week. Said it reminded them of that night you helped me, remember? Eli looked up from Jonah's math, his eyes meeting hers with quiet understanding. How could I forget? Best flat tire of my life. You were pretty hopeless with that, Jack, she teased. I was distracted by the amazing woman who stopped to help me, he countered, making her blush. Gross, Jonah commented, but he was grinning as he set the table. After dinner, they fell into their usual evening rhythm. Jonah took his bath while Maya and Eli cleaned up the kitchen, moving around each other in a comfortable dance of dishes and leftovers. The rain started up again, a gentle backdrop to their domestic scene. Pastor Ruth asked if we're still good to help with the food drive next weekend, Maya mentioned, handing Eli a plate to dry. Wouldn't miss it, he replied. The Promise Fund matched all the donations this year. Should be able to help twice as many families. Maya nodded, thinking about how much had changed since that first rainy night. The foundry hummed with activity now, training programs running at full capacity. Rain Angels had helped dozens of stranded motorists, never charging a dime. And here in her kitchen, something just as meaningful had grown. A family finding its own unique way forward. Story time, Jonah called from his room, right on schedule. Your turn, Maya said, bumping Eli's shoulder with hers. I'll finish up here. Eli dried his hands and headed down the hall, where Jonah's voice could soon be heard doing all the character voices from his favorite book about race cars. Maya wiped down the counters, listening to their laughter with a full heart. When the kitchen was clean, she sorted through tomorrow's schedules one last time. 3 vans would be out during the predicted storm, their routes carefully planned to cover the areas where people most often got stranded. She'd be driving one herself, she always did during bad weather. Eli returned from Jonah's room, moving quietly now that their boy was drifting off to sleep. He went straight to the cabinet where they kept their thermoses and travel mugs, pulling down the familiar blue thermos that had started everything. Making sure you're ready for tomorrow's rain, he said softly, filling it with fresh water to be ready for morning coffee. He set it between their 2 regular mugs, his with a chip in the handle, hers with faded flowers, ready for their early morning routine. Maya watched him, this man who could have lived anywhere in the world but chose to be here, helping with homework and thermos preparations. Who understood that sometimes love looked like practical things, transmission repairs, and math problems, and hot coffee on rainy nights. The porch swing creaked softly as Maya, Eli, and Jonah swayed in the cool evening air. October had painted the maple trees along their street in brilliant shades of red and gold, and the setting sun made them glow like stained glass. The air smelled of fallen leaves and someone's fireplace nearby. Jonah sat between them, his toy cars lined up carefully on the wooden slats of the porch swing. He made quiet vrooming sounds as he pushed a blue sedan back and forth. Maya watched him, remembering how just months ago they'd sat on a different porch, just the 2 of them, wondering what the future might hold. Look at that sky, Eli said softly, pointing to where pink and orange clouds streaked across the horizon. Almost as pretty as the night we danced in the rain. Maya smiled, nudging his shoulder. You're getting sentimental in your old age, Mr. Whitaker. I prefer to think of it as appreciating life's simple pleasures. He reached over and straightened Jonah's collar. Speaking of which, Harold mentioned the second foundry location today. The old warehouse in Bristol might work. Really? Maya sat up straighter. That's only 30 minutes away. We could expand Rain Angels' coverage area too. Exactly what I was thinking. Eli's eyes lit up the way they always did when discussing their shared projects. The building needs work, but the bones are good. High ceilings, plenty of natural light. We could set up twice as many training bays as the current location. Can I help fix cars there too? Jonah looked up from his toys, eyes wide with hope. Maya ruffled his hair. When you're bigger, sweetie. For now, you can keep being our official sticker distributor. I like giving out stickers, Jonah said proudly. But I want to learn everything. Coach says I have good hands for fixing things. The title still made Maya's heart flutter. They were taking things slowly, letting Jonah set the pace for what he called Eli. Coach had stuck after the festival, and it felt right, respectful of Erin's memory while acknowledging the growing bond between Eli and her son. You definitely have mechanic's hands? Eli agreed, holding up one of Jonah's small palms against his own. See? Already getting those workers' calluses from all your Hot Wheels maintenance. Jonah giggled, then yawned widely. He abandoned his cars to curl up against Eli's side, his head heavy on Eli's chest. Within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep. The sunset painted everything in soft gold, as Maya watched Eli absently stroke Jonah's hair. Such a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes about how far they'd come from that rainy night on County Road 6. I've been thinking, Eli said quietly, careful not to wake Jonah. What if we added a training program specifically for high school students? Weekend workshops, maybe summer internships. Get them interested in trades early. That's brilliant. Maya nodded slowly. Especially for kids who might not be college-bound. Give them real skills, maybe even line up apprenticeships. Exactly. And we could partner with the school district, offer credit for completed certifications. His voice held that quiet enthusiasm she'd grown to love, not the polished pitch he used with donors, but the genuine passion that drove him to keep building, keep helping. We should talk to Miss Rodriguez at the high school, Maya suggested. She runs the career counseling program. She'd know which students might be interested. Eli smiled, always thinking 3 steps ahead. That's why Rain Angels is doing so well. You see the whole picture. I learned from the best. She gestured to the street where one of their vans was parked. The logo, a wrench with wings, caught the last rays of sunlight. Though I still can't believe how far we've come in just a few months. I can, Eli said softly. You've always had this in you. You just needed someone to hold the ladder while you climbed. Maya felt tears prick at her corners of her eyes. You did more than hold the ladder. You believed in me when most people would have run the other direction after that gala disaster. Running was never an option. Eli shifted carefully, adjusting Jonah's weight against him. Not after that first night in the rain. There was just something about you. The way you took charge, refused payment, handed me that thermos like you'd known me forever. My famous blue thermos, Maya chuckled. Who knew it would change our lives? I think our lives were meant to change that night. Thermos or no thermos. Eli's voice grew thoughtful. Erin was watching out for both of us, bringing us together like that. Maya looked at Jonah, peaceful in sleep, then at the man who had become such an essential part of their world. The last light of day painted everything in soft amber, and the first crickets began their evening song. A car passed slowly down their quiet street, its headlights sweeping across the porch. She leaned against Eli's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the autumn air. You know what I think about sometimes? That first morning in the hotel lobby when you recognized me, you had this look on your face, like you'd found something you didn't even know you were searching for. That's exactly how it felt, he admitted. I hadn't been able to get you out of my mind after the tire change. Then there you were, and everything just shifted. Maya reached over and took his free hand, lacing their fingers together. The porch swing moved in a gentle arc, its chains making soft music in the gathering dusk. Jonah mumbled something in his sleep about race cars. She squeezed Eli's hand and whispered, I'm glad you couldn't stop thinking of me. Above them, the first stars began to appear in the deepening blue of the sky, and somewhere down the street, a porch light winked on. Another peaceful evening in their new normal, the life they'd built from a chance meeting in the rain and a child's innocent words. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, casting warm patches on the honey-colored hardwood floors. Maya stood at the counter, measuring cinnamon into the coffee grounds, while Jonah's footsteps thundered down the hallway. "Inside feet, buddy," Eli called from the living room, adjusting his tie in the mirror. He smiled at his reflection, still amazed at how naturally they'd fallen into these Sunday morning rhythms. "But I'm a dinosaur," Jonah protested, though his steps got noticeably lighter. He appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing his Sunday best, a crisp blue button-down tucked into khaki pants, with one shoe on and one shoe clutched in his hand. "Mom, can you help?" "The laces are being tricky." Maya wiped her hands on a dish towel and knelt down. "Come here, my little T-Rex." Her fingers worked quickly, double knotting the laces while Jonah balanced against her shoulder. "There. Now both shoes are ready for stomping." "Gentle stomping," Eli amended, entering the kitchen. He wore a charcoal suit that made his eyes look warmer somehow, though he'd left off the jacket in deference to the mild autumn morning. The sleeves of his white shirt were rolled up to his elbows, a habit he'd picked up from working on the Rain Angels vans with Maya. Maya stood, brushing invisible dust from her knee-length purple dress. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat braid, with a few stubborn strands already escaping to frame her face. "You look handsome," she said, straightening Eli's tie even though it didn't need it. "You look beautiful," he replied softly, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "Ew," Jonah declared, but he was grinning as he darted past them into the hallway. Maya followed, pausing beneath the framed photograph that held pride of place in their home. Sergeant Aaron Brooks smiled out at them in his dress uniform, his bearing proud but his eyes kind. The hand-lettered motto beneath read, "Keep your promises," in Maya's careful script. She touched the frame gently. "I think he would have liked this," she said. "All of it." Eli stepped up behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. "I know he would. He saw the best in people. That's why he stopped to help a scared kid that night." He squeezed her shoulders softly. "It's why Jonah has that same way of looking at the world." From the kitchen came the familiar gurgle of the coffee maker finishing its brew. Maya turned, catching the scent of cinnamon and roasted beans. Speaking of promises kept, she went to pour the coffee into the blue thermos, the same one she'd pressed into Eli's hands that rainy night that felt like a lifetime ago. The thermos had become something of a symbol for them, a reminder of how a simple act of kindness could change everything. Jonah appeared with Maya's purse and the church bulletin from last week. "Pastor Ruth said, I get to help with the offering today," he announced proudly. "I practiced walking slow." "Show us," Eli suggested, and Jonah demonstrated his most dignified walk down the hallway, chin held high. "Very presidential," Maya approved, handing the thermos to Eli. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and she felt that familiar warm flutter in her chest, the one that hadn't faded even after all these months. Eli took a sip and hummed appreciatively. "Still the best coffee in Lake Willoughby." "That's because it's made with love," Jonah said matter-of-factly, repeating what Maya often told him, "and cinnamon, but mostly love." Maya gathered her purse and keys, while Eli helped Jonah into his light jacket. The morning sun painted everything in soft gold, making the ordinary moment feel somehow sacred. Through the screen door, they could hear the church bells, beginning their gentle call across town. "Ready?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Eli nodded, Jonah bounced on his toes, and she opened the door. The autumn air was crisp and sweet, carrying the distant sound of the choir warming up. They stepped out together into the morning light, a family built not by blood, but by choice, by faith, and by promises kept. The blue thermos passed between them as they walked the familiar route to church, Jonah skipping ahead to collect particularly colorful leaves. Maya's hand found Eli's, their fingers intertwining with the ease of habit and affection. From the open church doors came the sound of the choir beginning their first hymn, the harmonies floating out to meet them like a welcome home. The music wrapped around them, familiar as a blessing, as they made their way up the worn stone steps together. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Maya Alvarez, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.